Hello everyone. If there is an ultimate suggestion I'll give you about drawing the human face, in this case the human eyes, it will be to draw more skulls, or rather, learn the Androlomis planes of the face. This will help you with the placement of facial features and give your facial drawings some level of symmetry. When drawing a particular facial feature, try not to study it in isolation. The eye doesn't exist, the human eye doesn't exist on its own. So try to study its relationship with other features on the face. Now we're going to start with the eyeball. The eyeball or sclera is the white part of the eye, and like any 3D object, it has form and it interacts with light. The sclera isn't pure white, it reflects skin tones, shadows, and ambient color. These are important facts to note because they help with observation when drawing or painting the eye so that you understand why your reference is the way it is. The second thing we're going to talk about is the iris. The iris is the colored part of the eye. It can be brown, blue, green, in the case of Muzan and the Uchihas, red. Everyone's iris pattern is unique, just like their fingerprints. I usually make the iris about 50% in width while drawing. That, of course, changes when the eye moves in different angles. I can't talk about the iris without talking about the cornea. So, the cornea is like a transparent contact lens or dome covering the front of the eyes, and it causes protrusion whenever we look at the eye, usually from a three-quarter view, not just a front view, and it's what gives the eye its shiny, glossy, and reflective look. The iris and cornea is only a perfect circle from the front view, and on the side view, however, the circle becomes an oval shape. That is the circle of the iris and cornea. And when it shifts further away from the center, the iris usually narrower and it becomes oval. The cornea, which is like a contact lens, it sits on top of the iris, and like a contact lens, it is convex and transparent. You can look at the iris like a bowl for putting fruits and stuff, and the pupil is like a black circular or oval dot in the middle. Speaking of the pupil sits at the center of the iris and it usually dilates to receive more light and it contracts to reduce the amount of light that comes into the eye. Basically, it gets larger in darkness and it gets smaller in bright light. The pupil size can be used to show exaggerated emotions when you're drawing, just like it's like in Puss in Boots, where the iris and pupil usually gets larger to show shock, love, or extreme cuteness, and they usually get narrow to show anger and focus. One fun thing about the relationship between the cornea and the iris when we're talking about light is that since they both have like opposing shapes, they are both like domes, but like the iris is like a dome for the cornea and the cornea is like a dome for the iris. Whenever light hits the surface of the iris and the cornea, the highlights usually appear in different areas. So for the cornea, since it's it has like a peak, a dome-like shape, the area which the highlights will be is going to be different from how the light is going to reflect on the iris. For the iris, it's going to kind of be like on the opposite side, and this is because of the location and the shape of the cornea. So whenever you see that bright spot um in the darkest part, that bright highlight that is like a dot in the darkest part of the iris, it simply just means that it's on the cornea, while you see that there'll be a lighter gradient of the original color of the iris. The light is hitting that area. Another thing about the pupil is that you should try to draw the pupil on the iris, not on the cornea. People usually, make this mistake, especially when they are drawing the eye from a, three-quarter like angle. So the eyelids is a layer of muscle and skin that can open and cover the eyeball completely. The eyelids usually define the eye shape and are also helpful in depicting expression, emotion, and personality when drawing. And you can see this when the eyelid is half closed, when the eyelid is widened or when the eyes is sort of squinting, and other things like that. So you can think of the eyelid like a cloth for the eye, just like the skin is a covering for our muscles and the rest of our body, which means that just like clothes, it's going to have creases, and this creasing is unique from person to person. And this creasing usually comes about due to the shape and structure of the human head and skull. Just like we see creasing on the sides of our elbows, our arms, our armpits, and areas that there are extra layers of fat on our on different parts of our body. The eyelids wrap around the eyeball, and whenever you're drawing the eyelid, you can break it down into five planes in general. So for the upper eyelids, you could give it three planes, and for the lower eyelids, you could give it two planes. And the peaks of the planes of the eyelids are not symmetrical. You can use diagonal lines to get the measurement and to indicate that asymmetry that is found in the eyelids whenever you're drawing it. Of course, the lower part of the eyelids can always be rounded out, but this is kind of like a simple technique that's going to help you to approach every eye. And once you learn these simple planes of the eyelid, whenever you're looking at different eyes, it's going to be quite easy to break it down. It's important to note that the movement of the cornea also affects the shape of the eyelids, and because the eyelids have thickness, make sure to show the thickness of the upper and the lower eyelids. If the light source, with regards to drawing the eyelid, if there is light source that is coming from above the eye, the top lid is going to have shadow and the bottom lid is going to have highlights, and that also happens vice versa. So the upper lid protrudes more than the lower lid, which acts as a protector and covering. And that is why usually, depending on the light source, you will see that the upper lid usually gets a lot of light, but the bottom plane of the upper eyelid doesn't usually get a lot of light. And the same thing goes on for the lower eyelid, where the top plane receives light, but the lower plane of the lower eyelid doesn't receive light. The eyebrow sits on top of the brow ridge on the skull, and there are different variations in shape, and it's usually dependent on expression or the emotions controlled by the muscles around the eye. So the muscles around the eye, you know it affects the shape of the eyebrows, and not just the eyebrows but the shape of the face, and it helps to convey emotion and expression. So the eyebrows could be very thin, in the cases of most women, whilst men tend to have fuller, straighter brows. Now, the outside ends of the brows usually tend to have lighter and less hair. So the eyelashes are curved triangular short hairs that grow along the eyelid edges. They are usually in clumps, and the ones at the upper lids are longer and much more in volume than the bottom eyelids. One cool trick to always draw the eyelash in the right angle, at least in the front view, is to make use of radial lines. This is going to help you to put the right angles, put the eyelashes in the right angles. Try not to draw the eyelashes like as individual lashes, because it makes your eye drawing to look uh like a bug with scanty few legs, or like a paramecium. So the eyelashes also create a cast shadow on the eyeball and skin, depending on the light direction. So you usually see the cast shadow of that eyelash reflected on the iris of a person's eye generally, and that cast shadow on the lower eyelid, you can also see it reflected on the lower eyelid, also dependent on the position of the light in the environment. Yeah, that's it for the eyes. I'm currently trying to improve my understanding of human structure and anatomy. So, I'm doing a lot of these studies to help, improve my knowledge, my understanding, and upgrade my skill on these art fundamentals. And, it's going to be a long journey, but I'm going to, try and keep you guys updated as to what I'm learning. Doing these videos are really helpful for me because whenever you are trying to make a presentation about something, whatever the topic is, even though you may feel like you have knowledge on it, innate knowledge about it, whenever you are trying to actually present it to people, you might discover that there are little lapses in your knowledge and how you can present it to someone so that they can learn. So doing these videos is kind of like always refreshing my knowledge and helps me become a better artist myself with each video. So thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. I really want to appreciate every single person that is viewing my shorts and liking and subscribing. I really appreciate. Thank you so much. Please like and subscribe. Remember, it takes time to actually get good. As long as you're consistent, you apply consistent effort, you eventually achieve the level of skill that you want to achieve in art. Stay creative, guys.